Hello. Can we start? Please come in, sit down. So thank you very much. It's a pleasure to have you here. We have this also taped and streamlined. So I'm glad to talk to all of you, either in person here in Dubai, but also outside. And we are very lucky to have the president of the World Bank, Ajay Banga. We have been interacting since our new jobs, and we're trying to coordinate, work together, make a difference, have a purpose together. And I asked AJ to come here and to talk about what have we done so far, what are the next steps, how are you seeing it, and what can we do more. So let me start just asking you, since the first time we started, how are you seeing this? How this has made a difference from your institution? I can tell you from ours. And what we need to push for, what is already moving along.
So thank you all for being here. Ilan, thank you for having me come and speak to the gang here, but also to spend some time with you. A few months ago, in my first month actually, when I joined, I went to visit in Jamaica and Peru, and we went together. And over the course of that trip, we agreed to work on 3 specific areas together. And I'm now using that model for similar partnerships with other multilateral development banks in the other regions. So the idea of 3 things to work on, very specific, narrow enough for us to be held responsible and have a specific target to look at. That same idea, we are now looking in, we've done a similar thing with the Islamic Development Bank. We're trying to do something similar with the African Development Bank. So the first thing I would say is the idea of having 3 tight things to follow appeals to everyone. Everybody wants to do that. Second, we specifically aimed at Amazonia bonds, and raising money for the Amazon was one big idea. The second one was Caribbean climate challenges. And the third one was digitization, starting with education for girls, but eventually growing broader into digitization of the whole. So let's start with the middle one, Caribbean climate. I think it's a real issue and a real challenge. I think when a small island gets hit by a hurricane or a climate event, no matter that they might be a middle income country, if they lose double digits of their GDP in one day, it's very challenging for them to then worry about repaying loans and repaying interest on loans. So one of the things we are doing, and I know that our institutions are discussing this, but we've gone out and announced that we will waive both the principal but also the interest repayment for that period of the crisis. We will also waive the charges of creating the liquidity for that for us by absorbing that through one of the trust funds that we have. And so essentially, we're giving those countries a free option that in the event of a disaster, their payments will be suspended for some period of time. Something that Mia Motley wants much, and she is very appreciative of that idea. The second one is more specific with the Amazon. There, the first thing we want to do together, which should be ready in the early part of next year, is to allow sovereigns, local development banks, but also private sector institutions to be able to issue Amazon bonds in markets overseas, and to be able to do those where we can provide the technical assistance to get those institutions to access those capital markets. I think there is real appetite and real demand for these kinds of bonds. The question is, can we package them, develop them, and put them out there together? That's the first thing we're going to be working on. But then there are a couple of other things that have come out, which we are now doing, which hopefully we can do more of. One is in Uruguay, where we are trying to do a perform for results kind of idea, meaning buy down the interest rate if Uruguay exceeds certain kinds of KPIs or certain kinds of targets. So, for example, if they can exceed the methane emission target on livestock beyond their nationally determined contributions for the Paris Agreement, then we'll buy down their interest rate by a certain amount. No reason that can't be applied to Amazon countries, as an example,
Yeah.
right? So something to be done and thought through. And then, of course, we're doing some interesting things with one of his old friends in Banco de Brazil, where we're trying to do some work on blended finance. And again, there's more we can do on both of these things together. I think the real thing that Ilan woke me up to in that trip, which I don't know if you remember, but we were sitting somewhere, you were trying to tell me why the Amazon is important. And he told me three figures. First figure, he said it is, and correct me if I'm wrong, 20% of the world's fresh water.
A good part.
20%.
We have
40,
the specialists.
yeah,
How much is 20%?
20%.
Yes.
40% of the remaining rainforest. That was the second number he gave me. And the third number he gave me was the challenge that 40% of the population living in the Amazon is below the poverty line.
Yes, that's true.
And 2 million of them are indigenous people. And
Yes.
once he gave me those three sets of figures, I realized that our first priority must be to work on something to do with the Amazon together. Because that is too important an asset to not work on together.
Yes, and we have been engaging together. You mentioned a few aspects that are. I'm glad that since we first talked, we have evolved. So, for example, you evolve with the Uruguay. It's implementable. We are going to announce the BID Clima with 9 countries that we're going to give them a reduction of our own loans. 2 of them or 3 of them are the Amazon. Brazil, Colombia. I don't know if there's any other one, but we are going to announce that we're going to work with them too.
No, but then what we should do is if you're doing that with a few of these countries, that means they're getting used to the idea of
Yes,
working with this kind of a plan. Maybe our team should go back to the same countries and offer similar things with our portfolio with them.
I think that's exactly it because once they develop the
muscle,
indicator,
the muscle memory.
indicator,
Yeah, exactly.
the muscle here is a verifiable indicator that everybody trusts. That's the difficulty here. So, for example, in Uruguay, the CO2 emissions
Correct.
and the
And methane
deforestation,
emissions, yeah.
but we can do it in other places. The Amazon, the CO2 or deforestation are very clear indicators that we can work together.
Excellent, excellent.
And then you can issue bonds for the private sector. So not only us in our portfolios, but then incentivize, like in Uruguay, you have bonds, so we can have our portfolios and in general. So that's, I think, one thing that have evolved, which I think is very important. We also have evolved in terms of work in Amazon, because when we talk about it, we talk about we need to care about people. It's not only care about the forest. We need to offer the people alternatives. We need to care about them. So when we talk about digitalization and education in the Amazon, education in distances with using digitalization is very important. So that's something that can be applied there. We are also trying to work with the cities. There is a cities network that we are together, and I know we have your team involved. So we have a network of cities because we're talking about the forest, but a good part of what people live are in cities. So we need to care about the cities. So that's a good part of what the Amazon Forever and your own programs are important in that regard.
So Ilan, yes, yesterday this is something that struck me just now. Yesterday we announced that we are going to be pushing for voluntary carbon markets with forestry credits. And we've got 15 countries that should be, Jennifer's here, she can speak to this with great knowledge. but we've got 15 countries over the course of the next 12 to 18 months where carbon credits that we are verifying
Okay.
through projects that we are doing, through jurisdictional audits around that project that we are doing, so we can verify the environmental integrity of the credit, but we can also verify, very importantly, the social integrity of that credit, because the money we are guaranteeing that the majority of the money that will be earned by selling that carbon credit will go to the community. So if we can do that in 15 countries, there is no reason why you and I cannot work together on that idea to expand it into countries that you may have a lot of knowledge of. And with your expertise and our expertise together, maybe we can bring a couple of these countries into the list earlier rather than later.
So we can bring them as pilots, maybe pilots here in the Amazon, because we have I know Brazil has just passed a regulation on markets, so they have the infrastructure, maybe helping them have an indicator which is verifiable, which I think is very important. It's a great idea, and
So-
maybe we can put Brazil on that, and we have others that we have been working on. I'm not sure if it's Colombia or it's Colombia. So we get Colombia and Brazil, the largest two. Why don't we do them as a pilot? We bring them. It's at the same time a pilot for those 15, and also a pilot for the Amazon that we're working. Together.
Exactly. So let's put it into that first category and let's aim for it.
I think that's great. You know what we're doing here? The other day we're doing a bilateral with you all here. You
Well,
all here like
We're doing a bilateral to generate work for all of you. So if you guys want this to stop, this is a good time. But otherwise, they're gonna keep going, right? She's laughing.
She's getting desperate here.
She's like, get him away from here.
No, but I think that's important. Let me ask you a question which goes more broadly. We need to think the MDB has a system, and the system is there, and there are all the MDBs that we talk. I mean, the agreement we did, you are replicating there. I'm also trying to have coordination with others. We're going to sign an MOU with the CDB, which is the Caribbean Development Bank, which we are talking about. So this is moving, but we have a responsibility with the MDB group. And can you talk a little bit about? We're going to have a meeting. I don't know if today or tomorrow. There's so many meetings that I forget. Well, I think it's tomorrow, right? So can you talk about that? What is your vision, and how can we work together?
So I actually think this is a real opportunity, Ilan, because you are going to take over the coordination of the MDBs
Yes.
now, right? Effectively.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, your responsibility is ours. So please,
Yeah.
guys.
So I mean, here's my 20,000 foot view on this topic. I think the fact that we are different MDBs with different shareholders makes us very complicated for countries to deal with,
Yeah.
because our different shareholders have made our processes and the way we get things approved different. And so if you go to a country and they have a project on which two of us are collaborating together, very often that country has to file for the same project two types of approvals. Then when we get into anything after that, there are two types of standards, whether it's procurement standards or others. So I think we need to think about this from the eyes of our client and realize that what we are doing is not good for them. If they had so many people available to devote to multiple projects, multiple standards, they would not be in the situation that they are in. We are here to help them, not hinder them. So I think your leadership on getting standards to work together would be the first thing. The second thing is on co-financing. The current method of co-financing is you find a project, let's say in Colombia, then you find that you don't want to finance all of it yourself. So you come to me and three other people, and there's a whole process of doing this. What we are trying to do, which I'm happy to give, is we are trying to create a technology platform with AIIB, with Jin, and put that platform together. So when you find the project, you can put the project into the platform and we can all do a bid together. None of this, you get it, then you come to me, I go to her, we all go together. And this whole circus that takes very long, we can reduce it by having one platform visible to everybody from day one. So that's another opportunity. A third one, which is really what tomorrow's meeting was meant to be originally, was, if you remember, we said on climate financing, let's get to an agreement on how we measure what we count for climate financing. So I think mitigation is a little easier than adaptation for those measures. I think we are making a little bit of progress, but not enough. And we are going out there, and the World Bank is saying, this is where we think mitigation measures could go. I would love for you to take the ideas, get everybody involved. We will change what we have to, but we need someone to drive this topic across the MDBs. Nobody is better positioned than you in this new role to make it happen. So I would say standards, co-financing, and this idea of how to measure climate impact. These three, if we can make progress in 1 year, it would be amazing.
And I think we can start tomorrow with us involved, the heads. Let's have a calendar where every 2 months, 3 months, set date, we say how we evolved so that we can update and see, because if we don't do it at the end of the year, it will be too late. And on those three, I have a few observations. On the first one, which is the standards, and it is good for the countries to look at one standard. Our clients cannot have like 3 or 4 and different, but it's also good for our shareholders and the investors to see that there's a standard across, or at least a standard that everybody trusts. It could be that we don't agree on exactly the same standard, but we can trust each other. And if we trust each other, then we can transfer this trust to the investors. And for us, it's very important because the investors coming in from all over the place is very important for mobilizing and bringing resources. So I think the standards are important for the client, but are important for the investors at the same time. I think that is one thing that we need to work on. On the issue of going together to the climate and what exactly we are talking about, I think it's essential. Because today, and I talk to James and others, each one has its own way of calculating what exactly means. We're having issues at the IDB. I'm telling them, I want IDB Invest, public IDB, IDB Lab. We need to have the same language. And I think we need to do it also across the MDBs, which I think is very important. And last but not least, your idea of, I'm going to call it a depository of projects.
Yeah, the co-financing. Yeah.
On the co-financing is very good to be able to have it. Somehow we are doing it in a different way. So when James from the IDB Invest talked to the DFC, they share the pipeline. What you're suggesting, let's do it in a more
efficient I'm trying to make it systematized, so it doesn't depend on individual operating comfort, but it starts becoming the way that the process works. Yeah, that's what I want.
Okay, I promise that I'm going to leave you out in 20 minutes. We've been in 20 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I think the Amazon appreciate your effort together with us. So thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
con nosotros. So let's start this panel on the Amazon. We are facing since the morning the issue of dislocations. People take a lot of time, but I'm going to take advantage that Jacob was here, signing with us an LOI and letter of intent. So he was already here, so no issue with moving along and entering. So I'm gonna start the panel with Jacob, and then we'll start. We have Susanna, and we have Garo Badmanian. So Garo, can you come here? The usual. You also soon. You also early. So please, thank you for doing this. So Jacob is the Director General of the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, SIDA, and Gairo Badmani is the Director General of Brazil Forestry Service, Ministry of Environment of Brazil, representing here Maina Silva. Maina Silva is a very important figure in Brazil, and she's a very good friend. Yesterday we were in a panel together, so thank you very much for doing this. So let me start with a question for you, Jacob. And the question will be kind of obvious. Could you tell us more about our recent IDB-SIDA partnership and its significance for mobilizing capital to protect the Amazon region? So how do you see our agreement?
Thank you very much, President. And as we just heard, we just signed a letter of intent to contribute to the Amazon Forever work program that are now being developed, and contribute with a significant guarantee to that for about $250 million. And I think I enjoyed very much the discussion you had here on trying to create a space for a common work program, standards, and see how we can contribute jointly to that. And that's also why we are engaging. Just like an anecdote of why is this important for Sweden? One might wonder. We are a small shareholder of the IDB, but from a global perspective, of course, the Amazons is very, very important. I had the opportunity in my previous job as one part of that to chair the Commission for the Antarctic Marine Living Resources. The Antarctic, as you know, is 10% of the global system in terms of the oceans. Now, when we met all the members of the Antarctic Treaty, including Brazil and other countries that are present in that, we speak about the Antarctic being the heart of the Earth system, and the Amazons being the lungs of the Earth system. So it's very, very important, of course, this system from a global perspective for all of us. But as we've heard, it's extremely important, the ecosystem services for people living in the basin, directly impacted by these ecosystem services, and for the broader region that also depend on this: water, rainfall, precipitation, carbon uptake, and so forth. So I think it's obvious for Sweden as a small country to participate from that global perspective, but of course also from the perspective of the countries and the people living in the basin and these very, very important ecosystem services that we see. Now, with the guarantee instrument, we find an opportunity to leverage significant capital on IDB's balance sheet, which is important. That will provide opportunities for IDB to do further lending, which otherwise would have been difficult. And so we see this as a very strategic way of collaborating with you and the countries at scale. And we hope that we can follow it very closely. And at the end, it's all about what the countries themselves want to do and what they lend for, which is critical here, and the type of impacts that they would like to see with the system that we provide through your leadership and with the countries. So we see this as a critical opportunity for us to contribute and look forward to work with you on this and hope to see the direct investments taking place. Thanks.
So thank you very much. And I must say that for us it's very important because we are in one side being asked to maximize and optimize our balance sheet. We have the CAF recommendations. We need to do more from given the resources we have. And at the same time, not only we want to have more scale, but we want to have more impact. And we need to choose where the places that we're gonna make more difference. So you saw the previous panel with AJ says we choose 3. And I always say also in the IDB, every time we go, say, give me 3. Sometimes they come with 4. Sometimes they come with 2. But the idea is not 20. It's to have a very, so we chose the Amazon because we believe the Amazon needs to be there forever. And that's why it's called Amazon Forever. It needs to be sustainable, therefore forever. And we have an holistic view of it, which means that if you're gonna control, monitor deforestation, you need to take care of the people. You need to give them an alternative. Take care of the people is social, is about sanitation, is about education, is about health, is about talking to communities. We're gonna have meetings with the communities here. Some of them are even in the public here. So it is very important. We need to give them alternatives of what to do. The idea that we are gonna pay for not doing anything is not there anymore. People want to have the livelihood. They want to have the jobs. They want to feel proud. They want to have income. They need to have jobs. So activities is either is the sustainable agriculture or the bioeconomy. We need to give them alternatives. Therefore, we have a network of public banks, development bank 20, that are financing small and medium enterprises. And we're doing another network, the IDB Invest, with the, how many, 26 private banks that will also finance these institutions, these companies. And we're talking with the cities because a good part of the population lives in cities. And if they live happily in the cities, the forest will be there. So we need to figure out what's important, as you did. This is a global issue. Independent of your share of the IDB, this is a global issue. And we wouldn't mind if you want to have a larger share. But we feel that we need to do things like what we agreed, where 250 million becomes 450. Where this is, and correct me because I heard you correctly, this is your largest operation in general. So for the Amazon, the Swedish government, SIDA, is doing the largest operation ever. So that I think is a very important sign that we are giving for the importance of here. So let me, I'm gonna ask for the question, I'm gonna go for you, sorry. But I'm learning how to do this, I'm sorry. There you go. So Garo, you can answer in English, Spanish, Portuguese. Pode responder em português aqui,
Okay.
a banca é livre.
Armenian? No Armenian.
What?
No Armenian.
I'm sorry, not Armenian, not Hebrew. So Amazonia Forever first pillar is about fighting deforestation. What is Brazil's strategy to address this? And how can the Amazon Forever program be more impactful in this regard? So we are having the Amazon Forever. You're taking care about Brazil. How can we work better together? How can we integrate? How can these resources that we're bringing be more helpful for Brazil?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Miss Minister Marina sends apologies because she had to accompany President Lula to the plenary. So, and she cannot be replaced, but I'll try to do my best here. The first thing is that command and control is important because it was not in control. So you're talking about deforestation, there was no control whatsoever. So deforestation was increasing. So first thing is to do command and control, but deforestation is not illegal, and some deforestation may take place. So the second issue is that deforestation will take us to a certain level, and we went down all the way to 4,000 square kilometers. From there on, what you have to do is sustainable activities that use the forest resources without deforestation. And this is very important for people to understand. The communities that are there are not deforesting. The deforestation is not done by the communities are there. They are not the ones doing the deforestation. And I'll give you an example on the organization that I took over. I started in the Forest Service, and we have a cadastre, and we identified 20,000 farms that were claiming land in 7.3 million hectares of indigenous land, which is absolutely illegal, is unconstitutional, is against the Constitution. But it's only 20,000 farms. We have 7 million farms in Brazil, and 20,000 farms were claiming 7.3 million hectares. That's the sort of illegality. These are big guys grabbing land. So we need to figure out how we help the communities to do their sustainable development. Okay? So the second point is that people have to understand things like I do forest management. Forest management does not generate deforestation. It's not the same thing. You can use resources, maintaining ecosystem services without clear cutting the forest. And the Amazon is full of products. Acai is not a unicorn. I get a little bit worried when we only talk about acai, like the acai was the only thing that happens in the Amazon. It's not a unicorn. We Brazilians consume thousands of other plants and other products from the Amazon. We just didn't have an entrepreneurial mind to pick that product and scale up and explore it and do the value chain. So your question, sure, we have to continue with command and control. But once the command and control goes, we need to invest, and that's where the banks can help us invest on sustainable development. Developing the technical assistance of existing products to make those products better, safer, more useful, not only acai, but others. Second, work with those communities on the value chain, the communities and the business side. We don't have to, everything has to be extracted with, but often our projects, and I used to work for the bank, our projects talk about the World Bank, talk about just the managing the resources, but we have to think about the processing, the value chain, all the other things that make the product reaching the consumer. And the projects have to include that kind of support, especially upfront, maybe with guarantees, maybe with technical assistance, maybe with first loss, things that commercial don't do. The other thing, the third point is that it has to be community development. That means if we are working with the community right now, people in the communities in the Amazon, if you can believe it, they are running out of water. They are drinking bad water and getting sick because of the bad water. So you need to have these communities having a minimum. The projects we do shouldn't be only on community natural resource management, but it's community development. They have to have internet, they have to have schools, they have to have education, they have to have clean water. That's part of the concept of development. And I know the banks can do that because you guys have people that work on those different topics. So it's something that the commercial banks don't do, but it's something that development banks can do because you have these cross-sectorial projects that you do. My final point is that we used to work Amazon, but the Amazon is not same everywhere. And this is something that I like all the banks to think about it. You have Brazil nut in certain places, but you don't have in the northern part of the Amazon, no Brazil nut. You have places where you have acai, places you don't have acai, places you have andiroba, places you don't have andiroba. So please understand the Amazon is too large to be treated as one single solution. And we need the banks to help us to identify the different clusters and different places to make this work, because different products will work different places and with different communities. Thank you.
So I want first to acknowledge Minister of Environment and Sustainable Development of Colombia, Susana Muhammad. Thank you very much for being here. We understand this is a crazy thing going on forth, so we had it all day. We just had AJ Banga here, and we had a very good conversation on our work on the Amazon. And with Jacob Granite, we had a letter of intent, and we just talked about how we're going to do it. And here with Brazil, with Gareth Batman on the deforestation, he was talking about the importance of the communities and how the communities can actually look for things. Actually, we're going to have actually in the pavilion of Colombia with the COICA, which is the communities, we're going to have an agreement with them of how we can help them monitor, because those are the ones that really, really understand are on the ground. So we can finance them and we can give them all the help for them to do the job. So that's a way to do it. Because when you ask us, let's be specific, let's do the reality of each one. They know it better than we do. What is their reality? So they know how to monitor, look at the projects. We're gonna have a project facility there so that we can help them create it and they can monitor that. So that's very important. And I think the point you brought is quite important. So I'm gonna directly to you, Susana. Susana has been a very important partner of the Amazonia Forever. We've been there from the beginning, since the idea on before Belen. We had later several meetings on several of the networks. Juan Pablo, he has been taking care with Tatiana and all of us here. So I want to ask you, let me start asking you about a more general question, which is, how are you seeing in our work together, what do you think is the most important issues you think we need to address specifically to move along? As you know, we have been doing a lot of things. The network of cities, the network of ministers, the communities. And now I want to ask you, what is the most important things we should be concentrating on?
Thank you very much, and thank you for this very important discussion and all the work that the Inter-American Development Bank has been doing and the support that is being provided to the government. Sometimes for governments to coordinate between them, you need somebody that is stable, and the Inter-American Development Bank is playing also that role of being there as a stable partner that can help the coordination between the governments. I think the Amazon has so many scales and so many different issues that you cannot pinpoint what is the most important thing. I agree with you in terms of that it depends where you are and what are the agreements. I believe there are two things that we are seeing critical for the process of the Amazon. One is, how can we improve the monitoring and the scientific knowledge and understanding of the situation of the Amazon? We need to define the main purpose, and then after that, what are the means of implementation for that main purpose? And I think here, the main purpose is that the bioma of the Amazon can recover its capacity to reproduce itself, and that can be done with the answers and the knowledge of the indigenous people and defending the cultures of the Amazon. I think this is the main objective. Then you have means to achieve that. In certain regions where there are other communities, colonial communities that have come to live in the Amazon, you need to organize an economy that helps to reproduce the Amazon as an ecosystem, and you need to work with those different cultures. In other parts of the Amazon, you have big business that have come into the Amazon, and they need to reconsider their business models. But what is the common thread in such a huge ecosystems, 8 countries, different levels of governance. What is the common ground? And this is something we've been working through the meeting in Belém de Pará. I don't think it's still solved, even among the governments, but this is the Colombian perspective. Our common ground is how the Amazon bioma doesn't disappear. This is our main objective. And if we set that and we understand that that has to be done with the cultures that have lived and even co-created the Amazon through their cultural ancestral process, this is one key pillar. Then you can start seeing how do you recover connectivity, how do you recover capacity of the Amazon, and you will find, like you do in Colombia, that there is a whole part of the Amazon that is the first line of deforestation. And then you try to understand what's happening there, why this first line of deforestation is there, and you understand a very complex social phenomenon, and you give an answer to that. And then the third thing, so if this happens to all of the countries, we will have different factors that we will need to address in some macro projects in order to be able to save the Amazon, which means at the end that people in the Amazon can live better. In Belém de Pará, in Leticia, what did people tell us? Is local communities, is the well-being of local communities in a way of living that does not affect the ecosystem. And then we have a key issue, which is the borders between countries. And we have identified that in those borders, there is a vacuum of governance. And that vacuum of governance is creating a very dangerous situation, which is the governance is being created by illegal economies. And that is trafficking of wood, trafficking of drugs, which actually in the global perspective of the new geopolitics of narcotics, actually the Amazon is becoming a critical corridor for export of cocaine through Brazil towards Africa and then through Europe. And that's why we are seeing the violence increasing in Ecuador and increasing towards the south. We need a strategy between the countries of crime investigation, and we need also these projects in the frontiers, in the borders that consolidate public governance so that we can confront these illegal economies, which are one of the critical aspects. And finally, I agree, the monitoring of the health of the Amazon with the communities, with scientific systems, to understand if what we're doing and what we're investing is reaching the purpose, or actually, I mean, I just end up with this. We don't want this big investment in the Amazon to become the last ingredient we needed to the Amazon to be finished. But actually, that this investment in the Amazon help us objectively to see that we are recovering the ecosystem within very difficult conditions, with the climate change conditions, which are help putting a lot of difficult situations. So I will say that, and then from that objective of saving the Amazon, its ecosystems and people, then the other objectives are subsidiary, are a means, like for example, develop a bioeconomy, of course, but for what? To save the Amazons and dignify the way the people live. If it's not for that purpose, if it ends up that the means end up to be the main objective, we could end up finishing or putting the last effort to actually finish with the capacity of the ecosystem to recover itself.
So thank you very much. I think it makes a lot of sense. We need to think what is the last objective, because we easily could have intermediate targets becoming the ultimate targets. And I can give you an example. I have started at the bank, and here the bank is IDB. I know your whole bank. But at the bank, I started saying, I know you have targets of envelopes, and envelopes is not the envelope. The envelope is the amount of money for each one, and each one has to, well, this year we had an envelope of $2 billion. Next year it was $3 billion. Look at all we're doing. And I said, well, this is good, but that's a means. And if the means becomes the objective, we lost something in the middle. So what you're saying resonates a lot with us. We need to look at ultimate goals. In this case, deforestation, the forest, the people there, the poverty there. This is what we need to know. How many people have access to sanitation? Are they drinking water, which makes sense, drinking water there, clean water? This time we need to be there. And of course, it's more difficult because it's not a number. Number is a number of billions dollars. As a seven indicator, it's harder to follow, harder to aggregate, harder to monitor. But the fact that it's harder doesn't mean that it doesn't need to be there. And that is important because this brings me that it's easier when we talk about the Amazon to explain it. And I want to go back to Jacob. He was mentioning something to me that talking about the Amazon is easier because it's something very implementable, something that people look at it. So can you talk a little bit about that? About your work on why is the Amazon something that could be explained, could be something that the citizens can understand from a government like Sweden?
Thank you. I think I like you talk about three things. The president says I also
Yeah,
figured three things
Yeah,
on this. And
that's perfect. I like that.
so one is what I hear from you, Madam, and from Brazil is the real sense of urgency that this is all about addressing people's needs, but it's also about addressing the needs of the ecosystem as a whole. Because if we lose that ecosystem, then the impacts for the people living there will be significant. And as I talked about earlier, even for a country in the north of Sweden, why we contribute to this is also because of a global situation. I mean, the Amazon is regulating the whole ecosystem. So it's extremely important from that point of view. So really this sense of urgency, and I'm, as a representing Sweden here, I'm very glad to hear how you explain that sense of urgency and why it matters to you that actually will implement these programs. So that's the second point. I mean, it's all about ownership, right? It's your ecosystem, but it's also part of a global public good. But we cannot contribute more than with resources and maybe knowledge on research and other aspects. But at the end, it is done by you, the countries who are doing this. So that's what was the second one. And I think the last one was coordination. I was also a World Bank employee for many years and worked on regional projects. And the multilateral development banks have this opportunity to be, as you said, integrating and supporting countries moving together on very complex regional issues. And I think that I'm so glad to hear that you put that role on the Inter-American Development Bank and that you play that role. So that finally gives us, of course, a great comfort in terms of being able to provide Swedish resources as guarantees in order to do more lending and scale up more capital for this important issue, because the agency that I represent, it only has limited amounts of grant resources, and it will never be enough. So we have to find this additional financing to do this. So those three issues, I think, is easy to convey for us, with our citizens back home that are contributing to this program, which will be implemented by you and monitored and supported by you and many other donors that contribute to this package. Thank you.
So the Amazon Forever is an umbrella. Look at several funds. We are not choosing a specific fund. It could be through our balance sheet, like in this case, but it could be through government resources. It could be for funds that people have. The only thing we want is to coordinate, having this role of coordination, which I think is quite important. So back to you. We have time just for the last words from you, and then I go back to Susanna. From what you heard about implementation, about the role of the multilaterals, the role of the donors, how do you react to that? You have to give your last words.
Okay, I think we have an agreement that the current process in the Amazon is not working. Deforestation took place, but did not generate development and did not generate income for the people. most people are still be living below poverty, below the poverty line. So this is not development. Somebody is getting rich, but it's not development. Actually, agriculture is not even the highest share of the GDP in any of the Amazon states. So it's not. This is not. When you say, "Oh, we have to clear cut because you have to generate development," is not happening. So we need a paradigm shift. What is the paradigm shift? Forest is an asset. The people that live in the forest know how to use the forest. People in the community. So let's think about the forest as an asset and how we can use the forest better while the forest stands there, as part of the overall development shift, so that the forest stands forever. But not only because it provides carbon, because also provides jobs, because it also provides just to give you an idea, restore 1 hectare, you generate 7 jobs. 1 hectare of planted on an area that has been illegally degraded, you generate 7 jobs. So those actions do generate jobs, do generate revenue, especially for the people that are already living in the forest. But we need to think of the broader scale that development, people move to the cities because they don't have health. Minister Marina left to Seringal, Cachoeira, and moved to the city of Rio Branco because she wanted to go to school when she was 16 years old. She was illiterate until then. Why? Because there was no school in her community. So we need to also think that these communities need the health, the health, education, and water, and now communications, because without satellite. So blended finance, technical assistance, the kind of work that the banks can do are very important to start up this process. Later, the market can take place. But right now, you need the investments and the technical support to create an enabling environment that later on can go on its own. That's what happened with Acai. That's what happened with Brazil nut. That can happen with other things as well. That's my message.
Thank you very much. And I'm going back to you, Susanna. I want to congratulate you. I hear that you had today approved the portfolio for climate transition, so congratulations. I hope the IDB continues to be part of your agenda. We have also financial agendas like the sustainability linked bond, which can bring resources. We talk about the Amazon bonds recently. We have debt for nature swap. So we have a portfolio also. So Susanna, last word from you.
No, thank you. I agree that what we were discussing now in the Colombia's socio-ecological transition portfolio has to do exactly with how do we create the public capacities you were also mentioning, health, education, governance, that allows for an economy to flourish in certain regions. But it's a different type of economy. It cannot be thought as an economy on demand. So we have a market, the market is demanding, and then we exploit, let's say, the Amazon for that demand. It is on the opposite. It is an economy of supply. And it's an economy of supply based on the rhythms of the jungle, of the rhythms of the forest, of the ecological rhythms of the forest and the people. That requires also certain infrastructure. We are thinking on the bioeconomy in the Amazon, for example, for certain areas, we say we need tourism here. But what type of tourism? What are the investments for that? Who runs the tourism? It is not a national company, it's not a transnational company, it is the communities themselves. And we can have world-class tourism, I would say community world-class tourism, community-based world-class tourism, where all the ownership and the revenue is on the community. And the government has to provide the capacities, the capabilities for that. Let's say the value chains of the bioeconomy. We are having those value chains, but they're very concrete, from the community to Natura in Brazil, but in very specific fair trade, commerce, community directly in their own process. I will say that the Amazon products can become this very important supply base when they're available, but when a consumer buys those products, that they will feel that what they're doing is actually really contributing to saving the forest. And not that at the end, any product from the Amazon ends up to be something that behind has the destruction of the forest and its peoples. So this requires a creativity process on how you develop that economy, what are the financial mechanisms, how you adapt culturally, and how you adapt to the rhythms of the forest itself and of the ecosystem. And it could be, Ilan, the first economy that is within environmental limits. So it's not because we demand, but it's because we come back to that old idea that you have what is in supply by nature, not what you demand and then you force nature to produce. And that creates a whole different paradigm, but it could create also an exquisite economy that has value all the way, and it's an integrated value. And this is a very big challenge in a region that lacks governance, has no infrastructure, requires basic needs of its people, and also the capacity to coordinate between different governments. It is a huge challenge, but I think, as you said, is critical for the whole of humanity. This is not a project. This is one of the main chains of climate stability and life in the planet, and we should see it from that perspective.
I like you, it's not a project, it's existential. I like that. And just to finish, we are getting out of our time, but we're talking a lot about communities and talking a lot about reaching out and being actually implementable. We have the communities here. We have actually the president of COICA, Fanny, here. So communities are here with us. They are ones, they're representing the community. So thank you for being here. We're talking, we really need you for monitoring, to work with us. Because again, it's not a project, it's about the communities that live there. So thank you all. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jacob, Susanna, Garo. Thank you very much.